That's all it took. Representative Joe Neguse walked into that hearing room with 2 questions and a video clip. And in 3 minutes, the Attorney General of the United States completely lost control. Not because the questions were particularly hard, not because Neguse was being aggressive, but because he asked the simplest question in the room, a question any first-year law student could answer in 5 seconds. And Pam Bondi couldn't answer it or wouldn't. And when Neguse tried to move on to his next topic, Bondi snapped at him with a sentence that has never been said in a congressional hearing before. You don't get to reclaim your time. Pause on that for a second. A witness at a congressional oversight hearing. A witness who is sitting at that table because she is required to answer questions from elected representatives. She told a sitting congressman that he doesn't get to control his own questioning time. That is not a legal argument. That is not a procedural objection. That is a power play. A deliberate assertion of authority where she had absolutely none. And it blew up in her face. Subscribe right now and hit the bell, because what happened in that room is something you genuinely need to see to believe. House Judiciary Committee hearing. February 11, 2026. Afternoon session. The hearing had already been running for hours by this point. Pam Bondi had clashed with Jamie Raskin over Epstein files. She had deflected Dan Goldman's questions about classification decisions. She had sparred with Ted Lieu about FBI investigations. Through all of it, she had developed a very clear pattern. When a tough question came, she would pivot. Pivot to Joe Biden. Pivot to Merrick Garland. Pivot to crime statistics in the questioner's district. Anything to avoid actually answering what she'd been asked. And she had managed to stay on her feet through some serious exchanges. Then Representative Joe Neguse from Colorado got his turn. Neguse is the assistant Democratic leader in the House. Former impeachment manager during Trump's second impeachment trial. One of the sharpest legal minds currently serving in Congress. He had been sitting there watching Bondi's playbook for hours. He knew exactly what he was walking into. And he came prepared with something Bondi couldn't deflect, couldn't spin, and ultimately couldn't survive. Her own record, her own words, contradicted completely by her own actions. Neguse didn't start with Epstein, he didn't start with classification. He started with something much simpler, a tweet. 6 days before this hearing, Pam Bondi had posted on social media, quote, "If you come for law enforcement, the Trump administration will come for you," end quote. Tough words, strong stance, public commitment to protecting police officers across the country. Neguse let that statement hang in the air for exactly 1 second. Then he pressed play on a video. The video that filled the screens wasn't from last year or last month. It was from January 6, 2021. Body camera footage recorded by Capitol Police. And in that footage, a man in the crowd was screaming at officers. "You were the Nazis. You were the Gestapo. Kill them. Yeah, kill them." His name was Jared Wise, former FBI agent. And as of last summer, senior advisor at the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi's Department of Justice, feel the full weight of that moment. The Attorney General of the United States, who had posted 6 days earlier that if you come for law enforcement, we will come for you, was sitting at a congressional witness table watching video of her own senior advisor screaming "kill them" at law enforcement officers on January 6. The cameras were locked on Bondi's face. She had nowhere to go, no pivot available, no talking point that could explain this away. Neguse's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Attorney General Bondi, that man in the video works for you now, correct?" Bondi tried to buy herself some time. Who was that? Congressman. As if she didn't know. As if she hadn't been thoroughly briefed on this before walking into the hearing. Neguse didn't flinch. The man in that video, the one captured in police body camera footage yelling "kill them" at police officers on January 6. His name is Jared Wise, former FBI agent. He currently works as a senior advisor in your Department of Justice, and Bondi, to her credit if you want to call it that, didn't lie about it. He does work for us, she confirmed, just like that. Jared Wise, screaming "kill them" at cops on video. now employed by the Attorney General who promised to protect law enforcement. Neguse let that confirmation sink in for exactly one beat. Then he laid out the full official record. This is an individual whom a federal grand jury indicted for 2 felony counts and 4 misdemeanor counts related to his participation in the attack on January 6. One of those felony charges was forcibly assaulting, resisting, opposing, impeding, intimidating, and interfering with law enforcement officers with the intent to commit another felony. He looked directly at Bondi. This is who you chose. As the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America, you chose to hire at the Department of Justice someone who is on video yelling "kill them" at police officers. Bondi's defense was one single sentence. I believe he was pardoned by President Trump, and there it was. The entire logic of this administration compressed into a single sentence. He yelled "kill them" at cops. He was federally indicted for assaulting police officers, but Donald Trump pardoned him. So now he works at the Justice Department, and the Attorney General doesn't see any problem with that whatsoever. Neguse saw the problem very clearly. Oh, he was pardoned. You're absolutely right about that. Pardoned by President Trump for his offenses. Pardoned for yelling "kill them" at police officers. He paused deliberately and let each word land separately. And yet you expect hard-working police officers across this country to believe that you and this administration take law enforcement seriously. Bondi had no answer to that. How could she? The contradiction was complete and utterly inescapable. You cannot post on social media that if you come for law enforcement we will come for you on Monday, and then hire someone who screamed "kill them" at police officers on Tuesday. You cannot call yourself the champion of law enforcement while giving a senior position to a man federally indicted for assaulting law enforcement. The hypocrisy wasn't subtle. It was documented on official body camera footage. It was in the federal indictment. It was in the DOJ employment records. And Neguse had just entered all of it into the congressional record. If you're watching this and you want to see what real accountability looks like, hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. What comes next is even more stunning than what you just saw. If you're watching this and you want to see what real accountability looks like when a congressman comes fully prepared, hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. What comes next is even more stunning. Neguse wasn't done. Not even close. He moved to his second subject, the Department of Justice itself, specifically what Pam Bondi had done to it over the past year as Attorney General. The Public Integrity Section, known as PIN, is one of the most important divisions in the federal government. It was created after Watergate specifically to investigate corruption by public officials, members of Congress, federal judges, government employees. It was designed to be the one place in law enforcement where political power couldn't protect the corrupt. And Pam Bondi had gutted it. Neguse wanted everyone in that committee room and everyone watching at home to understand what that meant, what had been lost, what Bondi had destroyed. So he asked the simplest possible question imaginable, a basic history question. A question with one single correct answer. A question that every Attorney General in American history would know instantly. Attorney General Bondi, do you know under which presidential administration the Public Integrity Section was first created? Pause right now and think about that question for a second. It is not a trick question. It is not a trap. It is not some kind of gotcha designed to embarrass anyone. It is a straightforward history question about a division of the Department of Justice that the Attorney General had personally dismantled. The Public Integrity Section was created after Watergate under President Gerald Ford. Any law school graduate knows this basic fact. Any Attorney General nominee would have been thoroughly briefed on this during their confirmation preparation. Any person who had actually engaged seriously with the history and purpose of the division they were actively dismantling would know this. Bondi's answer should have been 2 words. Gerald Ford. Instead, she said something that told the entire room everything they needed to know about her and about this administration. I can tell you what administration the weaponization was ended under. She didn't answer the question. She completely ignored the question. She pivoted immediately to her prepared talking point, to the single word that the Trump administration uses as a shield against every single accountability question: weaponization. The DOJ wasn't gutted under her watch. It was de-weaponized. PIN wasn't dismantled. Weaponization was ended. The framing was so automatic, so obviously rehearsed, so completely divorced from the actual question that had been asked that it laid bare the entire strategy in one sentence. Neguse had heard more than enough. "I'll reclaim my time, Attorney General." This is standard congressional procedure. Happens in literally every oversight hearing. A member of Congress asks a question. The witness doesn't answer or starts filibustering. The member exercises their right to reclaim their time and move on to the next topic. It happens dozens of times in every single hearing. It is how congressional oversight works under the Constitution. Except this time the witness didn't accept it. And that is when Pam Bondi said the sentence that no witness in the history of congressional oversight has ever said. You don't get to reclaim your time. Not a legal objection. Not a procedural challenge. Not an appeal to Chairman Jordan for a ruling. A direct assertion of power over a sitting member of Congress. An explicit rejection of his constitutional authority to control his own questioning time. The room went completely silent for 1 full second, then erupted, because what Bondi had just said wasn't just rude or aggressive. It was a fundamental rejection of the constitutional authority of Congress itself. Members of Congress have the right to conduct oversight of the executive branch. That authority includes controlling their own questioning time. A witness at a congressional hearing is there to answer questions, not to determine which questions get answered or how much time a congressman gets to ask them. Bondi wasn't just refusing to answer Neguse's question. She was claiming the power to refuse, asserting authority she simply did not have. And she was doing it out loud. On camera, broadcast live to the entire country. Jamie Raskin intervened immediately. He addressed Chairman Jim Jordan directly. "Mr. Chairman, I need to explain to the witness that the gentleman from Colorado absolutely does get to reclaim his time." Raskin's intervention wasn't just about procedure. What Bondi had done was either a fundamental misunderstanding or a deliberate rejection of how congressional oversight works. The roles in that room were clear. Neguse asks questions. Bondi answers them. Not Bondi decides what gets asked. Not Bondi decides when the questioning ends. Raskin understood that. Jordan understood it. Every person watching understood it. The only person who didn't was Pam Bondi. Her refusal revealed how she views her role. She didn't see herself as a witness accountable to Congress. She saw herself as an equal who could override the constitutional authority of elected representatives. That is not what the Attorney General is. The crosstalk became chaos. Bondi talking over Neguse. Raskin addressing Jordan. Jordan trying to manage the room. At one point, Jordan even offered to answer Neguse's questions himself. And through it all, Neguse stayed calm. When the noise subsided, he did something more devastating than any counterattack. He just answered the question himself. Quietly. Precisely. The president under which PIN was created was Gerald Ford. It was created after Watergate. I'm not asking you a question anymore, Madam Attorney General. I'm stating for the record that PIN was created under Gerald Ford. After Watergate. Neguse answered the question. Bondi refused to answer, because someone had to put the correct information on the record. Because facts matter, even when the person responsible for facts refuses to acknowledge them. Neguse moved to his final subject, the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team eliminated under Bondi's tenure. Attorney General, how many people currently work in the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team? Bondi refused to answer. Neguse knew why. Mr. Chairman, I might as well ask you these questions since the Attorney General refuses to answer in good faith. He looked at Bondi. The questions I've asked are not trick questions. They're basic questions about how the Department of Justice functions, and your unwillingness to answer them speaks volumes. When a member of Congress asks how many people work at the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team and the Attorney General refuses to answer, it's not a coincidence. She's refusing because she eliminated the entire team. Why? Because her boss is making money hand over fist through cryptocurrency holdings. $1.4 billion over the last year. He looked at Jordan. Mr. Chairman, what is happening at the Department of Justice is a disgrace. I urge you to gain control of this hearing and remind the witness she is here to answer questions from Congress, not to lecture us about what questions we're allowed to ask. 3 minutes. That's all it took for Joe Neguse to completely dismantle Pam Bondi's credibility. A video of her own senior advisor screaming "kill them" at police officers. A basic history question she couldn't or wouldn't answer. And a sentence she never should have said. You don't get to reclaim your time. Jared Wise. Gerald Ford. The National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team. 3 subjects. 3 complete failures. 1 attorney general who clearly believes she's above congressional oversight. And 3 minutes that showed the entire country exactly what happens when someone forgets they're accountable to the people's representatives.